The Politico reported yesterday that the FTC may open a lawsuit against Southern Glazers for antitrust reasons, citing the Robinson Crusoe Island Act. No,
So close.
it's what is it? Robinson.
Robinson Patman.
God, why do I always get that wrong? Robinson Patman, which is interesting because they want to reduce pricing for the consumer, but really what they're alleging that Southern does is give volume discounts to certain retailers like Total Wine, which would which would give better pricing to consumers. So I'm not sure what I get it that they want to level the playing field because it's unfair to smaller liquor retailers that don't get that pricing.
And that was the theory on how this kind of came about, was those initial like California retailers brought that pricing discrimination lawsuit. Whether that's the actual impetus or not is, up for debate, but it's pretty close in timing that it would be reasonable.
Yeah, I think so. And I wonder if the Pro V case against RADC and Southern has any bearing on this. I'm sure they're watching it. By the way, the FTC does subscribe to our publications. So if you're listening, we love you. We love you, Lena Khan.
Just cover all the bases.
Yeah, just cover all the bases. Southern Glazers always ends up on top. They have tentacles everywhere. They're politically connected. I don't know. They seem to always win. So we'll see.
Well, apparently, the way the Politico article kind of phrased the next steps is they're like, a lawsuit's not exactly imminent, but they're like, hey, we might sue you. And Southern has an opportunity next week or in the next couple weeks or something like that to make their case before a lawsuit is even filed, to be like, hey, please don't sue us right now.
Yeah.
We're already being sued on an antitrust.
Yeah. I'm sure part of that will be, hey, we're bringing lower prices to consumers by doing these quantities, which, by the way, all wholesalers do quantity discounts. And I know the FTC is looking at Pepsi and Coke for the exact same reason.
Yep.
I love how Total Wine has gotten somehow roped into this. And they're like, oh, no, wait. They're like, we want to see all your invoices for like the last 5 years. And I'm like, no, fuck. And one of the owners of Total Wine, he ran for Senate
David Trone, he's run a couple times.
He spent a lot of money of his own money on these campaigns. And did he win?
Yeah, he's a U.S. rep. That's what it says.
Oh, so he's not a senator. He's a rep.
No. He's a representative.
Oh, okay. You know who does not like Garfield? And that's Biscuit. Biscuit really does not like Mondays. So
what's happening?
Pete Marino in the flesh.
Hey, Sarah. Hey, Harry.
Welcome, everybody, to BeerNet Radio, the podcast where all your dreams come true. I'm here with executive editor of Wine and Spirits Daily, Sarah Barrett. Sarah, it's good to have you on the podcast.
Well, it's so good to be here.
Finally, we get Sarah on the podcast.
I'm
the incomparable Sarah Barrett, I think you should say.
Incomparables, right.
I like it.
And we have a guest today, Pete Marino, who is the president of Bardstown Distillery in Kentucky. Pete, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. You had asked me about this portrait of Hemingway over my right shoulder. That was actually a gift from Komil Gajrawala on my 50th birthday.
I was there.
That's right. And he not only gave me this Life magazine, actual from the 60s, he gave me a portrait that was painted of myself looking like that in a Life magazine. And it's so awesome, but it's not something I can put in view on the podcast because it's like Trump having a portrait of himself over his fireplace.
Too narcissistic.
Yeah. Even for me, Sarah, it's a little bougie.
Sarah, I've known Harry probably a bit longer than you are. And that's quite evolutionary.
Yeah, it is. Times have changed, Pete. Nobody
Yeah.
likes a narcissist anymore, unfortunately.
Don't mess with somebody who buys ink by the barrel, though. That's a lesson I've learned long ago.
So, Pete Marino used to be with Molson Coors. He was the president of their emerging brands, or whatever you want to call it, division. And we've known each other, like you said, Pete, for 20 something years. And we've had some tough discussions. And at one point, we disagreed on something, and I pulled out the "don't fuck with somebody who buys ink by the barrel."
Yeah.
And now he throws it in my face all the time. It was one weakness. It was what?
There's a lot of layers to that story. Maybe a subject for another podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do want to point out that everybody I was fighting with at Molson Coors about that is gone. Gone. So who always remains? This guy right here lives on. And I will be here when everybody else all my enemies are gone. So
maybe that should be a new segment on the podcast. Harry versus
yeah.
blank.
Yeah. Yeah. So somebody died like 2 weeks ago, and Jen was like, "Should we report on that?" And I was like, "No, I'm glad he's dead. Unless you want to print that." So
Kind of a different tone there.
yeah.
We appreciate you coming on today and chatting about your new role here. I guess first off, for anybody who's just not familiar with, Bardstown Bourbon Company, could you just give us a quick, kind of in a nutshell, who Bardstown is and what their kind of major, business units are?
Sure. Yeah. So Bardstown is, really just coming up on our 10-year anniversary of being a business. And it was started 10 years ago by a guy named Pete Lofton. Pete was a kind of a tech entrepreneur who started getting involved in the whiskey business just as an investor. And he came to Kentucky and said that he loved the whiskey business, loved the space, but he's like, there should be something different around the bourbon experience in Kentucky, and he wanted to build a Napa Valley style experience in the middle of the Bourbon Trail. So he came to Bardstown very specifically. He bought a 100-acre plot of land, and he built a beautiful new modern disruptive whiskey distillery. And so we've been at it for 10 years, but really we've been at it for less than that, because we came out with our first brand in 2019. And then last year in 2023 was our first estate distilled product, our Origin series. So we're still relatively new from our own brands, and we're very new from the level of the competition that we go up against, whether it's the Jim Beams, the Heaven Hills, the Sazeracs. There are some names that have been around and brands that have been around for generations. And so we are a kind of a modern, disruptive, and innovative, transparent whiskey company that, aims to bring a Napa Valley style experience to the Bourbon Trail. And if you've spent any time in Kentucky, you would see the dichotomy. And both things are great. You go to Buffalo Trace in Frankfort, you go to Heaven Hill or Willett, just down the road from us. And, they are beautiful places. They're spectacular. They're great places to visit. But then you go to Bardstown and it just feels very different, in part because we're less than 10 years old, and some of these places have been around for, like I said, generations. So we also own a second distillery called Green River. And Green River, while Bardstown's brand new, relatively speaking, Green River's been around since 1885. It's the 10th oldest DSP in Kentucky. And so we kind of have the best of what's new, and we've also got the best of what's old. And so those are the two businesses that we run and own. And we have a great capital partner in Pritzker Private Capital, a Chicago-based PE shop with a very long-term horizon to themselves. So we're really excited about what we offer and the position that we play in the industry, and I'm happy to get into all that as we progress.
And Pritzker, is that the same family as the governor of Illinois?
It is, yeah. So Tony Pritzker and his brother JB, who's the governor of Illinois, started this company years ago. Obviously, JB is the governor of Illinois and no longer involved. So Tony Pritzker is the leader of Pritzker Private Capital.
Okay. How did you get involved with these guys coming from the beer industry?
So interesting story. When we kind of created the emerging growth division at Molson Coors, we sat back and determined what are the areas that we wanted to get the company into. And so we decided early on to get into non-alcs, which, led to our relationship with the Zoa Energy Drink and others. And we decided to get into spirits, specifically whiskey. And so David Coors and I, put our heads together, created the Coors Whiskey Company. And we went and looked at a variety of different places where we could go blend and create our whiskey. And we landed in Bardstown. And so I originally came there as a customer and experienced what they did on the custom distillation side. And they were the home and are the home of the Coors Whiskey Company. They're also the home of Blue Run, which has since been acquired by Molson Coors. And so that's how I got to know them originally. They were at one point they were owned 25% by Constellation. And Mark Irwin, who's the CEO, fantastic guy. I established a relationship with Mark just based on our customer relationship at Coors Whiskey Company. And when Pete Lofton died a few years ago, the ownership essentially went into a trust. And so they were trying to figure out, how to continue to capitalize and proceed with the business. And he called me up one day at Molson Coors and said, "Hey, would you ever be interested in taking a look at this? We're going to try to figure out what to do, whether we're going to, try to buy out the 25% from Constellation, or kind of all options are on the table." I said, "I'd love to talk about it," because, we were trying to figure out how we could get more of a presence in some of these emerging categories. And the next call I got from Mark was a couple weeks later, and he said, "I sold the whole company to Pritzker Private Capital." I was like, okay. I immediately called one of my buddies who has been at Pritzker Capital, and I said, "You son of a gun, you guys just made a great purchase." And he's like, "We're so excited." And so I've known some of the Pritzker Private Capital guys just from Chicago circles. And so when I left Molson Coors a little over a year ago, I wanted to do something that was private equity backed. And so I went and looked and talked to a variety of different people. And Bardstown, the combination of Mark Irwin running the business, the quality of people and the quality of offering at Bardstown and Green River, and the folks that I knew at Pritzker Private Capital, those all things came together, and I jumped on board, and it's been great.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, you're not a stranger to whiskey, obviously, starting with the Coors Whiskey Company. But I wanted to touch a little bit more on the kind of contract distilling versus the owned brands for Bardstown, because it started out as just the contract distilling, and then you said launched the first brand in 2019. So how does that break down now? And are you hoping to have more of the branded side of the business, build that out a bit more? How do you think about contract distilling? How does that kind of break down for you?
Yeah, I mean, so custom distillation is deeply rooted in our DNA. It is how we started the business. And it is something that is going to be a very important part of who we are as an overall entity for a long, long time, hopefully forever. I mean, we love our contract partnerships. It is a very large and important part of our business. It's the majority of our business today. We continue to invest in it. We just put a third still on our property in Bardstown late last year to make sure that we could continue to satisfy and work with contract customers, as well as growing our own brand over time. But we think it's never going to be an either or for us. It's a both and. That business for us, again, it's how we started the business. We have given birth to a tremendous amount of brands. We think we offer something that's quite unique. There's a lot of other contract opportunities out there. Most of them, you get to choose from a very small handful of mash bills. One of the reasons why David Coors and I came to Bardstown originally was due to the customization. So last year, we did between 50 and 60 unique mash bills at Bardstown alone. So Sarah, if you wanted to come and create a brand and you had something that was pretty deeply rooted in your brain about what you wanted it to be, and it wasn't something that was readily available in the marketplace today, you could come to Bardstown. We're going to collaborate with you, and we're going to create exactly what you're looking for, and we're going to figure out how to help you. And whether that's not only laying down new make, we'll help you buy aged product. If you want to get a product into the market sooner, we can bottle it for you. We can age it and store it for you. We can do some interesting blends and some interesting finishes. So we really offer, from start to finish. We can do everything for you. We have a great lab that we can provide quality control for you. It is really it's kind of the Willy Wonka chocolate factory for whiskey brands.
I
Yeah,
imagine that gives you some like interesting insights into the whiskey category at large then, right? As you're kind of helping to develop these other brands.
yeah, I mean, certainly one of the things I loved about running the emerging growth division at Molson Coors was getting access to entrepreneurs across all different beverage categories. I think entrepreneur stories are just they're inspiring, they're interesting. The passion and the commitment from entrepreneurial owners behind their brands is just something that's always given me a lot of inspiration. So getting continued exposure to brand owners in the whiskey space is awesome. And yeah, there's a lot you can learn. You can kind of see things develop. Like we saw, the super premium part of the whiskey business has slowed down a little bit. We saw that, pretty early, which has been helpful. But it's a great part of our business. Again, we're never not going to be in the custom distillation business. It's something that is really important to us. We will continue to invest in it. We're going to continue to provide great customer service. We already do provide great blending and capabilities. We give some of these new brands access to Steve Nally, our master distiller, who's in the Bourbon Hall of Fame. We've got a guy named Dan Calloway who runs new product development for us, who is, just exceptional at what he does, and just the care and the customer service and the way we think about your brand and our brand, being one, that we think of our home as the home of all of these brands, and they can come onto our facility, they can use it as their own, and it's just a really important part of our business.
Well, let's talk about your own brands.
Yeah.
So it seems like you guys have built a commercial apparatus around it. And so what are your expansion plans? How many states are you in, and what's the deal there?
Right now, we're in 31 states for Green River and 28 states for Bardstown. The Bardstown expansion has been a little bit slower because it's been hampered by the amount of juice that we've had available to sell. So again, in early 2023, we came out with our Origin series, and that was the first estate distilled product that we laid down 6 years ago. So now, as we've got more product that's coming of age to 6 years old, heading into next year, we'll have a lot more access to the juice that we need into our Origin series. So we are starting to ramp up expansion for Bardstown as we get through this year and then into next year. We are entering into Nevada and Arizona this year, for example, our 2 expansion states. There's a few others that are coming for Bardstown. Green River, on the other hand, has all the juice we need right now. So we're moving with a little more pace on the expansion of Green River. But
Right.
by the end of this year, we'll be in, almost 35 markets. I think 34, 35 markets for both of them.
Okay. And coming from the beer industry, you have a really good knowledge of the beer network, wholesale network.
Yeah.
And with Sazerac kind of switching gears and switching their distribution over to beer distributors, how do you view distribution as you eye these expansion markets?
Yeah, I mean, Harry, I have a lot of great friendships amongst many of the Molson Coors beer distributors. They're great guys. I have a ton of respect and admiration for what they do, the way they merchandise, the way they, the frequency of calls. It's very different than what the traditional spirit wholesalers have done. And I think that you're seeing some of the larger spirit guys, trying to invest to become a little bit more beer distribution like, in terms of they're investing in C-store salesmen, for example. But yes, I mean, I love the beer network. I've spoken to a lot of them since I've gotten this role. Sazerac was a big opportunity and a big moment for many of them. And so now they are starting to invest and to think more holistically about what spirits can be in their portfolios over the course of the next several years. And so I've heard from a lot of them. We're in discussions with some of them. And as we expand throughout the country, I would be surprised if we didn't end up in some beer houses. I can't say enough positives about about the beer network. They're great. And the more they understand spirits and the more they invest behind it, I wouldn't bet against them. They're going to figure it out, and they're going to be as powerful and strong in spirits if they want to be as they are in beer in the future. And the guys that are making those investments, that's going to pay off for them.
Right. My view is that especially where liquor can be sold in C-stores and grocery stores, that would be the markets that I would think beer wholesalers might have an edge, just because they service those accounts so much more often, and they're merchandising them so much often. But they do move at different speeds, velocities, and I think the beer guys are really learning that you really have to have a specialized sales force to take more time to sell, because these products, they're expensive and they move more slowly. And it's not just going in and taking an order. You have to actually sell it in.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And by the way, the spirit network there's some great wholesalers out there as well. We've got a large and expanding relationship with Breakthrough, which obviously has exposure to beer, and we've got a very large relationship with R&DC, and both of those organizations do very well for us. We love our relationship with them, and I've got, but I think competition is good for everybody. And if the beer network continues to be more competitive in spirits, I think it's going to help everybody increase their game.
Yeah, yeah. I've been surprised at how well RNDC has done with Happy Dad, which is clearly a C-store, grocery store product. Yeah. And when the Happy Dad guys first told me they were going with RNDC, and they have beer markets as well, but mostly RNDC, I was like, oh, really? Is that where you want to? Do you really want to be there? It's turned out all right. So, but hey, I'm still a beer guy. Don't get me wrong, Sarah. Don't get any ideas. Sarah knows that I'm not beloved over in the wine and spirits industry, so we keep a wall.
Catch more flies with honey, Harry.
Yeah, this part of the wine and spirits industry loves you, buddy.
You know what? They come around. They don't get up and walk out when I enter a room anymore. So we're making progress, mainly because a lot of them have left. Once again, I just outlive everybody, and
well, like all spirits, you are an acquired taste.
That is true enough. True enough, Pete. I would be remiss. Biscuit wanted to make sure she told me to tell you hello.
Look at little Biscuit.
She's
so doing what she does best.
Biscuit, wake up. We got Pete Marino. Remember when we took him to the ranch? And
one of the things I will tell you, that the similarities between the beer network and the spirits wholesalers is, the amount of passion that the spirits guys have for their portfolios is great. Yeah. And there's a high willingness to win. The investment that they're willing to make in building your brands is similar and great. So there's a lot of wonderful things about the current players in spirits, but there's also no doubt that the beer network selectively is going to get a lot bigger in spirits in the years to come.
I bet you're getting a lot of inbound calls from the beer guys saying, "Hey, don't forget about me." Don't forget about me down here,
I am having a lot of conversations with old friends and some new friends about that. And it's interesting. Obviously, it's very early for some of them in terms of their experience in the category, but they're learning a lot. They're understanding, to your point, about what the differences are from a sales call standpoint, and what the differences are between the products. And certainly velocity, as you mentioned, is one of the big ones. But again, I wouldn't bet against the beer network.
And what about how you market the brands? I mean, you were involved pretty heavily in marketing beer products at Molson Coors. I'm just curious, with beer, with big beer brands, it's all about digital, TV, sports. Well, that's it. Digital, TV, sports, and the wine and spirits guys are, they seem more subdued. They don't really have as much cash to throw around. How do you adjust your thinking toward that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the unique things about the whiskey category is the amount of influencers that exist, on social media, people who are, podcasters or who are doing taste tests with videos. I mean, it's a very important part of spirits marketing in terms of, getting product in the hands of some of these influencers. So that's one thing. The amount of beer influencers who are trying new brands, it's night and day different from where spirits is. The other thing for us, our biggest marketing investment this year for Bardstown was an experiential tour that we did in 3 cities: Louisville, Nashville, and Dallas. We did 4 nights in 3 cities, so 2 nights in Louisville, 1 night each in Nashville and Dallas, and it was called the House of Bardstown. And it was an invitation only experience, and we took over a house in a pretty cool part of town, and every different room of the house was a different expression of one of our brands coming to life. And again, the amount of, while we only really, I think there were 1,200 or 1,500 people that experienced that over the course of the 4 nights, but the amount of social chatter and the amount of amplification that we drove about our brands from that was really compelling. On Green River, the biggest thing we've done this year is we kind of did a Chicago takeover around St. Patrick's Day. And we said, don't drink the Green River when we dye the river green in Chicago, drink Green River bourbon. And we did a pretty holistic campaign. We had some radio ads, banner ads. We had a bunch of social advertising. We did a bunch of sampling events in and around Chicago. We drove a lot of distribution, and we sold almost 1,000 cases in a very short period of time. And it was kind of a more traditional, maybe we stole a few elements out of the beer world on that. But it was a terrifically successful program for us. And I think you're going to continue to see us get, more disruptive in our marketing in the future. We just brought on an AOR, if you will, Forsman and Bodenfors out of New York, to help us think through the evolution of how we want to market our brands with distinction. But you're right, we don't have, budgets to create 30-second commercials and we're going to blast them away on sporting events. That's not what we do. We're a little bit more specific than that. We do have some video assets that we can use, and we've done some things from a targeting standpoint on YouTube TV, and we're doing a lot on social. But I think the story of our marketing right now is very much in development, and we're going to continue to be as disruptive and breakthrough as we can be over the course of the next few years.
What is AOR?
Agency of record.
Sarah,
Get
don't
it together, Harry.
Don't laugh at me. I'm old.
It's a good question.
Thank you.
I also wanted to ask about M&A, especially with the private equity backing. So you've got Green River. Okay, so is there anything else on the horizon? Are you looking at other opportunities? And does the contract side play into that at all? Like, is there anything on that side that you would look to acquire to beef up that side of the business as well as just branding?
So M&A is absolutely in our remit. We have made 2 minority equity investments in brands that haven't been announced yet, but will be in the weeks and months ahead. We also are going to continue to look across the landscape, both in the U.S. and internationally, for opportunities to continue to add to our portfolio. So we will be active in the M&A space. We have been active in the M&A space. And I think the combination of organic growth and inorganic growth through acquisition or partnership will certainly be a part of our growth agenda over the course of the next few years.
Can you share, is the focus whiskey?
The focus right now is whiskey. That's not to say it couldn't evolve over time, but right now the focus for us is whiskey.
What about RTDs?
We are looking and exploring some innovation opportunities around RTD, but more ready to pour than I would think, which you would consider, kind of something that comes in a 12-ounce can at the moment.
Yeah, canning product adds a whole nother dimension of costs and dilutive profit, and
well, especially for the premium space, that ready to pour, ready to serve just fits it better. Just you can get that higher quality packaging. It can look a little nicer.
Right.
And for us, if we were to do an RTD, in a can, that would be something we would have to co-man. We don't have a canning line.
The whiskey industry lately has kind of reminded me of the craft beer industry 10 to 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You see a parallel there, and how are they different?
I mean, certainly there are some parallels in terms of the amount of brands that have been created over the course of the last 5 or 10 years in the whiskey category. You could draw some similarities to some of the previous craft beer explosions in this country. But I think from an attitude standpoint, they're dramatically different. When I ran 10th and Blake at Molson Coors, I had an opportunity to go meet with a lot of different craft brewers around the country. And there's obviously some fantastic people and some fantastic beers that exist in this world. And, that's part of the reason why the craft beer business exploded. So the two different times it did in the last 25 years. But I think the overall attitude, and this is a generalization, it's certainly not everybody. The overall attitude from the craft beer business, I think, got in its way of growth a little bit. So if I was a craft brewer and I said, Sarah, try these 5 double and triple hopped IPAs, and you try them and you're like, I really don't love them, but I don't want to be rude. The attitude from a lot of the craft brewers in general was, well, if you don't like it, it's because you're not cool enough to like it.
Totally.
And in whiskey, the thing that's blown me away is, like, again, to mention Steve Nally, our master distiller, this guy's in the Bourbon Hall of Fame. And if you sat with him, he would say, Harry, try this whiskey neat. You don't like it neat? Try it on the rocks. You don't like it on the rocks? Put whatever you want in a cocktail. If you want to put Kool-Aid in it, you want to put Mountain Dew in it, it doesn't matter. Try a way you like it, and welcome to the party. And that is just a tremendously different attitude between the way I think the whiskey market shows up. And I think some consumers can feel that. And so if you think about the flavor capability and the range of cocktails that whiskey can show up in, I think that's part of the reason why the whiskey category and the spirits category in general has been in growth for so long.
I think that's what's helped attract women too, is that you're not like turning them off immediately by being like, oh, you need to have a 3-foot beard and these hipster glasses or whatever.
What's wrong with beards, Sarah?
Yes, Sarah.
Let me
tell you, talk about lack of hair.
I think you're absolutely right. They were too precious by half, and it has gotten in the way because Gen Z doesn't give a fuck about any of that. They just won't. They know what they like, and they like what they want.
Yeah,
if that makes any sense at all. Which it
and
does.
You know what? That's the kind of the palette of age generations right now is what is part of what attracted me to come into the whiskey category. When you think about Scotch whiskey, to a lesser extent Irish whiskey, but certainly Scotch has done an unbelievable job of establishing premiumization over the last 100 years. And, between using age statements, using packaging, how they just show up in the world, it's a very prestigious way, and they've built specialness and aspiration. Now, if you put a Scotch whiskey in front of the average younger age 21 plus consumer, it doesn't match up with their palate, I think, the way American whiskey and bourbon does. Mm-hmm. Bourbon is a little bit sweeter, it's a little bit more utilitarian in a variety of cocktails. And I think that is a really big advantage for American whiskey and bourbon as bourbon starts to expand internationally, because I think there's a sweeter and more flavor forward palate amongst these younger generations. And that bodes well for our category over the course of the next, 10, 15, 20 years.
I totally agree. Bourbon does lend itself more to the younger palate. And you also ran Latin America for Molson Coors. Are there any export opportunities for these brands?
Yeah, Latin America right now is not a huge whiskey market, but I think, again, that will be changing over time. We've got two, we're planting some very small seeds right now with our own brands in the UK and Australia. But there are, India is a huge whiskey market. Japan, obviously, Japanese whiskey is obviously having a moment. But Japan is a big consumer of American whiskeys. Western and Eastern Europe are becoming big. So I think American whiskey, has been, if you go into any bar around the world that has an American whiskey, it's probably either going to be Jim Beam or Jack Daniels. That is changing right now. I think, I know Buffalo Trace just opened up a little outpost in London. There is a lot more investment happening from a wider range of American whiskey companies. And I think that there's going to be tremendous opportunity internationally for American whiskey and specifically bourbon in the years ahead. The very exciting opportunity for us.
Sarah, you got any last questions for Marino?
I mean, I would say I think the only other thing to touch on would be maybe as you've kind of settled into this new role, kind of your top, like kind of goals or plans for the rest of this year and beyond, maybe like your short to medium term goals, and whether you're like coming in shaking things up or if you're just kind of learning the process at the moment.
We've been kind of upweighting our sales efforts over the course of the last several months. We brought on Scott Blazik in the beginning of the year. Scott is well known to a lot of folks in the beer business. He ran sales at Heineken for a while. He was at Diageo before that, and then he ran Breakthrough in Nevada for 7.5 years. And so Scott has been in charge of our sales organization for 5 months or so now, and has done a great job of bringing new people into our organization, kind of reframing what good looks like. As we expand geographically, we're doubling our sales force from a feet on the street standpoint over the course of this year. So that's one big focus effort of ours. We talked about custom distillation earlier, and that remains a massive part of our business. And then the other opportunity is really making sure that we are giving the right amount of love and attention to both Green River and Bardstown. Green River is a massive opportunity. It is, when you think about, Sarah, a lot of the stuff you're reporting on all the time, we talked about the ultra premium is under a bit of pressure right now. So Green River, is $34.99, and the amount of the quality of that product at that price point just offers tremendous value. It's great liquid. And then as we're continuing to get more access to 6-year-old juice at Bardstown, continuing to push our Origin series out there. And then we also are able to do these interesting kind of LTOs, if you will, through our Discovery series. We've got Discovery series number 11 right now, and we do a couple collabs every year. So right now we're in the middle of, we just launched a collaboration with Amrut, which is a big Indian whiskey company. And so we just put out our collab with them. It's got an unbelievable receptivity amongst the whiskey influencers that we talked about earlier. And then later in the year, we've got another collab coming, and that's with the Silver Oak Winery. So another cool opportunity to partner our brands with other interesting brands in the wine and spirits world. We did one last year with Goose Island, so we went into the beer world for that one. But a really good opportunity to continue to expand our brand with people who may be coming into it from knowing the collaboration partner, and people coming in from the whiskey side to get exposed to our collaboration partners. So there's tons of opportunity in everything that we're doing. We've got a massive ambition. We've got a great capital partner to help fund our ambition. We're building a great team. We've got a great leader in Mark Irwin, who's just an exceptional leader. He used to run Army Delta Force. So, leadership is something that is, a deep part of who he is. So we've got the team, we got great quality products, we got great facilities, and we've got an appetite to continue to invest to win. And so it's a really exciting time to be in the president's seat of overseeing these two businesses, and watch this space, because we'll certainly have more news to come in the weeks and months to come.
And what is an LTO?
Sarah, why don't you answer that one then?
Limited time offering.
Okay. So it's like a BOGO.
No,
buy one,
but
get one.
if you want to believe that, that's fine. Yeah. And LTO, so our Origin series is available all year long.
Okay. I mean, I knew what an LTO is, obviously. It just Biscuit was confused.
Oh, that makes sense. She's moved a little bit.
Yeah. Look at that. Look at that Paul hanging off the bed. Just Biscuit,
Aw,
wake up.
Biscuit.
This is Pete Marino, for God's sake. Yeah.
Oh,
Never mind.
oh,
Never mind.
I want a dog camera. That sounds fun.
Trust me, no expenses is spared over here to have the dog camera.
Harry, can we just go out maybe with a little smoke?
Of course. Oh shoot, it's not turned on. Sorry, Pete.
Oh,
It takes a
man.
while to heat up, but
Fix it in post.
I'll fix it in post. You know that.
Yeah.
This podcast is sponsored by The Summit. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you may have noticed I'm wearing a nice Mylar golf shirt with the breakers on it. And you might have been thinking, God, Harry, are you rich? No, no. I don't have to be rich to go and stay at the breakers at the Summit because we have a special room rate that's way about half of what it would cost you to stay at this premier property in Florida. In fact,
Our room rate is impressive.
yeah, I would say that the breakers, to me, it's the nicest hotel in the United States. I'm not even kidding. And it's January, starts January 12th. We start with the beer. We end with the wine and spirits. It's going to be fantastico. And you can get your tickets. The tickets are open at beernet.com. So be sure and check that out. And
get them while you can. I've been to several summits, always worthwhile. Great networking opportunities. You always have some great speakers where you can, not a lot of them say much, but you can learn a thing or two, but the networking is second to none. So I look forward to hopefully seeing you guys there in January of 2025.
Yeah, well, I mean, Pete, a lot of people at Molson Coors don't say anything because you would coach them not to. So let's call a spade here.
Fair enough, Harry.
All right. Well, we'll check in with you next week. Listen, have a good weekend, and we'll check you later.
Thanks. See you.